Supira, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's the floor's packed. I mean, this is a bigger TCT than the last few years. I don't know if you've noticed that as well.
Yeah, it's really buzzing. The exhibit hall is buzzing. The late breakers are going to be very impactful, and I agree with you. It's just it's very, very optimistic
Yeah,
about this.
I like to see this for the industry.
Yeah,
Let's jump into MCS.
Yeah.
You've got a large commitment to that, but before we go there, tell me a bit about yourself, our viewers a little bit about yourself. Set up the table for me.
yeah. So I was originally from a small town in South Florida. Grew up there. Ended up meeting my wife, who is a Michigander, and I moved to Michigan about 12, 13 years ago. I've been working in Detroit and in the suburbs of Detroit for the past 12, 13 years, and have a passion really for complex PCI, high-risk patients, and cardiogenic shock, and been able to really establish a career taking care of those patients.
And I just want to make sure I heard that right. You moved from South Florida to the north end of Michigan.
At one point, there was a lot of stops in betweens, but born and raised in Florida, left when I was a young man. I was 17, trained at a lot of places throughout the country, and ultimately ended up in Detroit in Southeast Michigan. But it's been good.
So you've selected an area of medicine and therapy, MCS and high-risk PCI.
Yeah.
What about that category spoke to you? I mean, that's a very niche market to
Yeah.
become, one of the best in.
Well, I think what really kind of drew me to the space was, I think as an interventionalist, that's where we can make the biggest impact. These are patients who are often in the highest risk category and historically weren't being treated. And so many years ago, when I started taking care of these patients, I realized very quickly that we could treat them safely and that we could make a big impact. Probably the biggest impact that we make as interventional cardiologists beyond STEMI is this population in the elective sense, high-risk PCI, and then in the emergent sense, STEMI and shock. So,
It's funny, right before we got on, I was having a conversation with somebody, and when we brought Impella over from Aachen, Germany in the early days, when Minogue picked it up with
Yeah.
Abiomed, that was a really crazy time, is to walk into a cath lab and say, we want you to wait
yeah.
and use this device.
Yes, that was, so DTU was, is still a very, very challenging concept for a lot of interventionalists. The notion that an artery is occluded and we put a pump in and then we wait a half an hour. And the DTU study has completed enrollment. Obviously, we don't know the results, we're awaiting them, but a very exciting time, because potentially, if the hypothesis is correct and we show the benefit, we could reduce infarct size, which is something we haven't been able to do for a long time for acute MI.
And Impella device, Abiomed created a market, right? That market didn't exist before, which is one of the hardest things to do in medtech, is to create a market,
Correct.
especially in an environment as high consequences as that one,
Exactly.
right? Now we've been at it that market's existed, since 2014, 2015?
Yeah, so the first PROTECT cases were done in 2006, 2007, but you started to see really adoption, widespread adoption, probably I'd say 10 years ago. And it's still continuing to grow. It was definitely an unmet need. We didn't have a lot of science and didn't have literature to support what we were doing. A lot of the stuff that we were doing were based on not only anecdotes, but things that we believed in from a pathophysiologic perspective, and the fact that we were having good outcomes, registry data that was supportive. And now we have randomized controlled trials, both in the high-risk PCI population and in cardiogenic shock, as you're familiar with DanGer. And we're really excited because PROTECT 4 has completed enrollment, and that's also going to provide some meaningful data to guide us.
And with Shifamed historically, their playbook has been, let's look at a massive market. There was a first mover. They created the market. They put out a phenomenal technology, but there are opportunities to make that technology better, faster, perhaps potentially a higher value to the
Yes.
patient in the hospital. And that's where Supira sits right now. Let's chat about Supira.
Yeah, I think Supira is a very exciting company with very interesting technology, yet to be determined on the impact that it's going to have, but it has the potential to have a high impact. They're a differentiator in the sense that they're, small bore device. As you know, Impella has a small bore device at ECP, but what's unique about ECP, which I had the privilege of being the national PI for, and I think is really going to be very impactful technology. But what's unique about the Supira pump is not only do they think that they could apply this to high-risk PCI patients, but the same small bore pump be applied to shock patients, and that's something that no one's been able to do. Use the same small bore pump for high-risk PCI and shock, and I think that's an important differentiator if Supira can pull it off with meaningful clinical data and evidence.
And we've got, how many patients, to your knowledge, so far have been benefit of the Supira pump?
So the Supira pump, to my knowledge, the early feasibility study was done in most of the patients by Dr. Abazaid in Brazil. I think they were just shy of 100 cases so far. And I know they're ramping up right now for potentially to start their US pivotal trial, which hasn't started yet.
And that's an interesting market, given that you're so deep in it. We've got Abiomed in there, we've got Supira, we've got Magenta coming, you've got got Puzzle, you got these others.
Yes.
It's a very crowded market right now, potentially.
Correct.
Right? So will that market stand up that many players?
Well, I think it's like anything else, the strong survive. I think if there's value, for patients, if they're safe, if they're effective, I think they'll stand up. That being said, right now, Abiomed has had a monopoly on the space for a long time. I'm encouraged by the fact that we have other opportunities because I think that only drives, all these technologies to be better. So Abiomed will continue to iterate and evolve. These new technologies will have to rise to the level and the standard that's been set. And so I think ultimately it's going to be great for patients to see this, competition where we're going to have better technologies and continue to evolve and innovate.
Yeah, the Supira platform most definitely has improved upon that baseline technology that Impella has. So with that, what are you expecting to see over the next few, let's call it years? What clinical evidence and/or clinical trends are you seeing we should keep our eyes on as we close this out?
Yeah, I think for MCS, we do have a standard now and we have data as it relates to Abiomed. So I think all these newcomers to establish themselves and to prove utility and value are going to have to compete in randomized controlled trials. We see some of the companies are doing that, Supira being one of them. And I'm eager to not only see this, but participate in these rigorous trials to see how we could best serve our patients.
Outstanding. Well, Amir, I appreciate your time today and your expertise on the subject.
Thank you for having me.
I'm Joe Mullings from the floor of TCT 2025 in San Francisco. Be well.